Hi there, I'm Dan Olsen, and tonight at Lean Product we had Amanda Richardson. Amanda was most recently CEO of Rabbit, and before that spent a lot of time as a product leader at HotelTonight, and before that a lot of other startups as well. She actually talked about an interesting topic tonight, which is good PM versus bad PM, and good product manager, bad product manager. And if that sounds familiar, it's because Ben Horowitz from Andreessen Horowitz, VC firm, wrote an article on that was very famous from a long time ago. So she revisited it today, shared some advice from Ben's article that she agreed with, shared some new advice, and kind of updated it with a lot of her own perspectives and examples, real life examples from her career. I hope you enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, please subscribe to our channel, like the video, and sign up for notifications so that you receive notifications when we post new videos. Thanks.
So here we go. I am here to talk about good product managers, bad product managers, and I'll tell a little bit about my story through product management mainly. I came out here for business school. Don't judge, I'm an MBA with a product management job. Like, we're so annoying. I get it. So I get out of business school. I decided I wanted to go to a company. As an MBA, are there any MBAs in the room? Well, there's one right there, UVA Darden. Okay, so I'm not alone. It's safety in numbers. So, we're not qualified to do absolutely anything, but we think we're outstanding at everything. So I got the classic MBA job, which is business development, which is ambiguous and unclear as to what you do. So I started in business development, and I'd been at the company for about a year. It was a hospital software company, which is kind of ironic because I hate hospitals, and at the time I hated software. That has changed. I still hate hospitals. But I had been there about a year and was doing all these partnerships. And has anybody worked in business development? No, you guys all hate the BD people. They never get invited to these things. I get it. I wouldn't have invited me either. But you guys made me crazy when I was in business development because we do these partnerships and like these big financial plans and these beautiful up and to the right charts with like lots of fancy slides with no basis in reality. And I didn't understand at all how anything of this was going to get done. But I mean, how hard could it be, right? So all of my business development plans would blow up, and every quarter I would come to our executive team and I asked Dan if I could cuss. I think it's going to happen. Okay. Anyway, I get my butt handed to me. That was my almost first slip up on the cussing. So I get my butt handed to me in these conversations, and I'd be like, well, the product team just can't deliver anything. Like, what takes those people so long? So you complain enough about the product team, you get moved to the product team. So this was the company, and this was my first product management job. So I called my mom. This is my mom. I called my mom to tell her I got my first product management job. What you should understand about my mother is she's like an OG developer. And by OG, I mean she coded with punch cards. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. She also, she was very good at what she did. And when Y2K came around, if you don't know what Y2K was, really Google it. That was a thing. And she's particularly good at Cobalt. So all these old programs were written in Cobalt, so she kind of traveled around the world trying to fix things for Y2K. So point being, my mom, despite looking nice and happy on her birthday, is kind of a little bit of a hardcore edge to her at the end. And so I called her and I said, Mom, I'm so excited I'm going to be a product manager. Oh, that is great, honey. I am so happy for you. What does a product manager do? And that was like red flag number one. She's a developer. And I was like, okay. I said, well, we get to decide what features go in the product. Long pause. What do the developers do? I was like, well, they just code it up. She's like, well, that seems dumb. She's like, the developers are really smart people, and I don't understand why they can't figure out what features go into the product. And I was like, oh, all right. Well, that was my first job in product. So I needed to clearly work on getting a better definition of what product management does. I actually failed pretty miserably in my first product job, I'm not afraid to admit, because I did just pick features and didn't do a lot of the foundational work that I think is required to be a product manager. So I tricked another company into hiring me, a company named Snagajob. When I started there, someone politely and nicely put this on my desk. So this, for those who haven't yet read it, is Ben Horowitz's take of good product managers, bad product managers. He wrote it when he was the CEO, I think, of Opsware. Someone correct my math or history lesson. You can read about it in his book. It's also on the Andreessen Horowitz blog. You should look at it. It's actually still pretty relevant and good. And I think this was someone nudging me into what actually good product managers do and what bad product managers do, indicating that a lot of what I had been doing before, including my business development role, was kind of bad product management. So to just pull out a couple pieces for people who haven't read it recently, a good product manager knows the market, the product line, the competition, knows it all extremely well, and operates from a strong basis of knowledge and confidence. A good product manager will know the context going in, the company, the revenue, the funding, the competition. They take responsibility for devising and executing a winning plan, no excuses. But what I think is particularly good about Ben's piece is he talks about bad product managers, right? We always want to talk in the positive about what good looks like, but I think juxtaposing that with the bad is particularly important. Bad product managers have lots of excuses. There's not enough funding. The engineers are idiots. Microsoft has 10 times as many engineers working on the same problem. I'm overworked. I don't get enough direction. Has anybody ever worked with a bad product manager? Come on, really? Only 5 people have worked with bad product managers? Give me a break. Put your hands up. No? No one else? Has anybody ever worked with a product manager? Are you guys the only product manager in your company and you're like all awesome at this? I mean, I love it. I love it. Hey, look, and then you guys come teach me how to do this thing. What I think was particularly good was the bad part. So I took that with me to Prezi, and I've taken that to HotelTonight, and then I've been on to a company called Rabbit. Now I'm doing some investment work. And what I wanted to do was revise this and say, what does a good PM look like? Where look does not mean what you look like, that I'm a girl, but look is like how do good PMs and bad PMs behave. So with full plagiarism from Mr. Horowitz, and if anybody knows him, my goal actually is to totally instigate him and troll him enough so that he will get on stage with me some point in a conference somewhere and we can have this debate and discussion about how product management has and hasn't evolved in 20 years. So there you go. That's my ask, right? You're always supposed to have an ask in a conversation. That's my ask. Someone find Ben Horowitz to go on stage with me. So what does a good PM do? Let's spend some time like digging in, telling stories, talking about what this actually looks like. So a good PM gathers information regularly and informally. I think what mistake we make as product managers is we forget the importance of informal communication. And I think we expect everything at this point to be packaged up and sent to us. We're busy people. It's easier if you just get the report. But when are you actually informally going out and chatting with customers, talking to users? And I would challenge you, informally chatting with your executive team. If you want to be aligned in the company strategy, you need to get yourself at the coffee machine with Mrs. CFO, Mr. CEO, whoever the people are, and just walk up there and be like, hey, let's spend 5 minutes. I'm curious about this. Did you know about that? Let's spend time getting aligned. So how many people have had coffee with an executive within the past 2 weeks? Okay, the rest of you now have homework. Congratulations. The other one, taking full responsibility and having the trust of the team. So this is one where I will fully own I have screwed this up a lot. I think taking full responsibility means that you understand the problem, but also that if there's ever a problem, you're the person that the company comes to. More often than not, I've seen situations where something goes wrong with the product. They have a question around like why a feature does this or doesn't do that, why this looks a certain way, how we figured out this price, how this is different from the competition. And if the person that the leadership, the executive team, Mrs. CEO is going to talk to is not the product manager, you are not leading your product and you are not leading your team. So if the questions end up at product marketing or your sales engineers or your head of marketing, you're in the wrong place. So you need to figure out how to gain the responsibility and the trust of the team and ensure you know your shit inside and out. The next one, Creating excuses. Please don't create excuses. Create and execute a winning plan. So I intentionally did not say roadmap. Ben talks a little bit about roadmaps. I think roadmaps are dumb, and I'm happy to talk to you about that and why I think roadmaps are dumb. But to me, this is about creating a winning plan. So this is really around having the entire plan for your product. Having your sales organized, your marketing organized, your engineers knowing what's going on, your customer support team up to speed, your executive team ready to go, your PR people on message. This is a winning plan. I think of the product manager as literally the conductor of an orchestra, right? So if you've ever been to a symphony, this person tends to stand at the front. This person probably plays a couple instruments, but can't play all the instruments and hasn't played an instrument in a while. But they know the song, they know where the song's supposed to go, and they feel the crowd, right? So they're feeling like, okay, we need more woodwind, more woodwind, more woodwind, okay. You know, like this kind of action, right? Bass, bass, bass. That is what your job is as a product manager. We need more demand gen, more demand gen, more to fix retention, fix retention, fix retention, sales price, sales price, sales price, executive PR, executive PR, executive PR. That's what you guys should be thinking about in your days in terms of how are you actually coordinating the plan across the company. And where are we going? To have a plan, you have to know where you are, where you want to go, and what tools you have in your toolkit to be able to get there. So think of yourselves, for those who are in product, and for those who are judging product managers, how good is your conductor? Part of having a winning plan is anticipating problems and flaws. So a classic example of this is when product managers complain about answering the same question over and over again. Or my other favorite is when product managers complain that people don't know what's in the product, right? Like, how many times do I have to tell you that it has that feature? How many times do I have to completely train the support team again? You know why? Because you got a shitty plan. Because you haven't taught the people around you what's important, and you're not creating systems that will help them to easily answer their questions. The ways that this is done well are teams that think of support tickets as bugs, and how are you treating that support ticket so that you never get another support ticket, right? So if you keep getting the same question over and over again from customers, from your woodwind section, from your executive team, it's because you're not anticipating the problems enough. And I think the only way you can anticipate problems, frankly, is you got to find time to think. And I know, we're all busy. We're all over calendared. We've got a million things going on. I have to go to this meeting and that meeting. We're talking about meetings in a minute. You've got to make time to think. Take a walk, do what you need to do. Give yourself the space to be able to think about where is this going to go wrong? What can I constantly learn from? What can I actually do to make sure I don't make the same mistakes over again? One of my tactics for this, true story, journaling. I journal every night. I still do. It's a little nerdy. It's fine. I journal every night for at least 15 minutes or 3 pages, whichever comes first. Inevitably, 15 minutes or 3 pages, I'm like enough in the flow that I've got a lot to say. But part of doing that is giving yourself the space to think and get your ideas out and get everything documented and getting yourself organized and what are the things I need to do. If I think about what I'm going to journal about tonight, I'll be like, wow, what went well in that conversation? What went well in this presentation? How could I have done this better? I really need to work this thing. I need to redo this page. I want to redo this point. Blah, 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 blah. You get the gist, right? That is time to think and reflect and figure out your plan. Take the time to think and reflect and anticipate the errors. Controversial but passionate point. A good PM is disciplined. Nothing makes me crazier than when people say they're going to do something and they don't do it. Like, if you're not going to do it, just don't say it. If you mean to do it and you don't end up doing it, you're just sloppy. So don't be sloppy. Everyone on the team knows who the sloppy person is, right? We've all worked with that person who, for whatever reason, says they're going to do something in every meeting, right? I'll take that. I'll do that. They never deliver. It's so annoying. Everybody knows they don't deliver. The point of the story is you've got to be disciplined. If you're not disciplined and strong enough to hold yourself accountable, no one believes in you, back to having trust and responsibility, And you can't call out other people when they miss their deadlines. And part of product management is kind of saying, where are we in the plan? What's missing? What do I need from you guys? And if no one can count on you, then you can't call them out when you can't count on them. So be disciplined. If you say you're going to do a status report, do a status report. I think status reports are important. Not because anybody wants to read your status report, but because I think it shows discipline and proactive communication. Spend 5 minutes, talk about what's going on in the product this week. What have you learned? What have you done? Communicate widely and specifically. Make sense? Getting head nods. We're all good PMs, right? Here are some things that I would like to challenge Ben on, and I think are needed to be added to this. So Ben talks a lot about maintaining your internal stakeholders. He never talks about talking to users. I think that's a mistake. I think good product managers have to talk to users. Even if you are in the most enterprise of enterprise software, where I have been, and the person who's buying is never going to log into your product, I get it. I know that world. If that user hates that product, word is going to get back. You are never going to win with unhappy users. You've got to talk to users. I know this is obvious. How many people have talked to a user this week? It's Thursday. Okay, how many people have spent at least 2 hours with users this week? It's Thursday. You've worked 32 hours. Less than 10% of your time has been spent with users. Think about that. You've got tomorrow. Tomorrow you can make it up. Clear your calendar. Get your butt out to the little customer space, wherever they are. At HotelTonight, we used to go out to Starbucks. We used to go to the Marriott with gift cards. The beauty of consumer products is we're all consumers. Guess what you can do after this? Grab your neighbor. Hey, can I ask you a question? Do you want feedback on my product? Can I ask you a test? We're all everywhere, right? Go out, find your users, get into the conversation. I challenge you. The other thing Ben doesn't talk about is partnering with design. Now, I will fully own that roles have changed, things have changed. Much like product management has kind of taken on a life of its own, so has design. I think there's an opportunity for Ben to really amplify how the world has evolved, even in enterprise software, of working with design. He talks a lot more about managing marketing and sales than he does about managing or partnering with engineering and design, and I think that's an opportunity. The other thing is, Ben talks a lot about knowing the company goals and the company context and the company funding. And look, I get that. All of that is really important. If you design a product that needs 55 engineers and your company only has funding to hire 2, like you have wasted your time and their time. So don't bother to do that. That matters, but it's more important to understand the customer goals because that can actually drive the funding plan. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it's something that I bet none of you have on your metrics or in your materials. How many of you are actually talking about not the feature you're delivering, but actually the customer problem and the customer goal that you're trying to achieve? This is something that Amazon, I think, does really well with their press release, right? This is the problem we're solving for the users. Think about that. How many times are you espousing that in your conversations? How many times are you really putting that forward in how you frame the issues and the projects you're working on? Even your next feature set release. How are you framing that in the goals of what the customer wants to accomplish? The other thing is consumer metrics. Look, how many of you actually have some sort of performance review or bonus plan that is dependent upon hitting a metric? Yeah, this is something we need to work on. We all need to be better about knowing our metrics and being accountable for them. We all talk about it, but are we really accountable? And you know, when the shit hits the fan, are you really like, I missed my conversion number, don't give me the bonus? This is where we really need to, in terms of like getting back to responsibility, I think this is a lot about not just owning, high level company revenue, but what are the actual metrics you have what are the levers you have in your product that are driving that revenue goal? Tie the metrics together, make yourself accountable. And by the way, the feedback I get on that line a lot is people are like, well, I mean, my company doesn't do it that way. I set my own goals, but I don't really set my own goals. And like, I've got to deal with my manager. And like, there's this like OKR thing that I'm like fighting battles about. And I get it. Only you can hold yourself accountable for what you think is most important. Put it on your goals. No manager is ever going to be like, oh, the bonus goal, you really want to be accountable for improving conversion by 20%? No, that's not important. We don't need that. Put yourself out there. Do it. Hold yourself accountable and be disciplined. And then finally, how we get a lot of our work done is influence. And so I think the other thing I would challenge Ben to think more about is good product managers have influence. So how do you gain influence? How do you think about how you can persuade organizations? How can you persuade people within the team and across teams to actually take on what you need them to take on? This is the challenge of the job, right? The irony of being a product manager is you don't actually manage anybody. I know we're supposed to be managing a product, not people. I get that. But the challenge of management is you have really no authority. But let me tell you, having been a CEO, guess what you don't have? Authority. You think you do. Everybody thinks their CEO's in charge. Your CEO has no clue. They're not in charge. You guys are in charge. Trust me, for sure. We can talk about that. But the reality is you're constantly persuading and trying to convince people and influence their behavior. Start with your internal teams, expand within your company, and then you really have to influence your users. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to compel them to try your product, to let you solve their problems. That's the challenge. So, that's what a good PM is. Duh, very obvious, Amanda. Apple pie, we get it. What do bad PMs do? So, this is one of my favorites. Gopher is Ben's word. I think it's a good one. When you're translating between sales and marketing to engineering, right? You may never have been that PM, but we've all seen that PM who just like sits with marketing and sales and is like, oh, this is what the 3 customers need. And then it's like you walk to the other side of the building with your list. And then you sit down and scrum and you're like, today we're going to work on exactly what the salesperson just told me to say right there. And people will be like, oh, what does that mean? You're like, I don't really know because the salespeople told me and I don't really understand why. And they put it in a contract and we need to do it for the deal, or I read about it in a blog, or I went to this dumb talk and they said that this was the right thing to do. You guys, you can't translate. You have to internalize. And I think the way you know if you're translating, here's a leading indicator. Do you spend more time talking to your sales and marketing teams than you spend talking to your users? So for those who have only spent an hour talking to a user or less than this week, how much time have you spent with your sales and marketing teams? It's probably more than an hour. I challenge you to amp up the user and figure out how to make sales and marketing more self-sufficient. Less translating, more getting to the heart of the situation and understanding the user on the front line. Oh, bad PMs, talking in features. So I do this a lot. I used to do this a lot. So particularly with my first job in that hospital software, I remember the first product I took over was a radiology product. The thing about radiologists is they're probably the most introverted of an introverted group of people. If anybody has ever met a radiologist, they sit at a screen all day and just like look at pictures, and they care about they care about patients. Like, don't get me wrong, but they're just not the biggest talkers. So they were a tough crowd. And inevitably what I would do is take my feature set and I'd stack it up against the other people, competitor A, competitor B, and look, I have more features. And then I even built a couple more because we wanted to be different. And it was so great. And we even actually convinced a couple people to buy my piece of shit software with this feature map. But the reality was it had no basis in what they wanted. And most of the deals I lost were to the under-featured but easier to use product. So stop arguing about features and functionality and start arguing about what you're able to do for your user. You've got to reframe all of your conversations to be about that, which sounds obvious, but I bet half of you in your desk or your deck or your laptop somewhere have your feature map of how you compare to someone else. Check, 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 right? And then blank space, blank space, blank space. Delete those. Start talking about how you're solving problems for your users in a better or different way. I'm going to let the next one sit up here for a second. This is my favorite. I get a little fired up about this one. Okay. How many people have a friend, not you, but have a friend who may have said, the head of marketing, the CEO, the leadership team doesn't know what's going on. There is no strategy. What is wrong with this company, right? I will admit it could be true. However, that is your challenge to solve. Back to having coffee or beers or whatever, burritos, I don't care what you choose. Go for walks, play tennis, whatever your thing is to spend time with the executive team and understand the strategy. That is your challenge. Or quit. If you really think there's no strategy, quit. You're never going to win that game. But lamenting the powers that be makes me insane, because that just basically proves that you have not spent the time evangelizing within the organization what you're trying to accomplish, and you haven't spent the time aligning with your team in the orchestra to make sure everybody has a plan. So if you feel like you're getting whipped around, it's your own fault. You've got to take ownership for it and fix it. And if you're putting out fires all day, it's a very correlated problem where you haven't aligned with the rest of your teams to understand what might happen, back to anticipating needs. But we all know the friend who is putting out fires. I met with a PM this morning who said, I just have, my portfolio of products is so wide, I feel like all I do is put out fires. And I was like, wow, sounds like you're not very good at your job. It was not what he was hoping to hear. He wanted feedback about something else, but I had to give him that feedback, because if you're putting fires out all day, you're not in offense, you're in defense, the whole thing's falling apart. And by the way, if by the time you think you're putting out fires out all day, your whole team has already known this. This is clear to everyone else, because you've got the calendar wall. No one can get in your calendar. No one can find you because you're always running around. You look a little panicked because no one wants to be panicked. And then you're sending emails at like 12:31 at night, right? That's what fires look like. Don't be that person. The next one, figuring out how things should be built. This one's an obvious one. We talk about this all the time, right? Like Marty Cagan's talked about this for years. The thing I think that product managers miss still today, 90% of the time, is they'll say, I'm not telling them how to build it because I'm not coding it or choosing the tool. But if you pull up whatever documentation they use, I will challenge to call it a spec. It's probably like 7 pages long, and it says things like, in the upper right-hand corner, there's an X that will do this. That's basically describing how something gets done. Okay. The way that I've seen made this mistake, we built an algorithm. When I was at HotelTonight, we updated the algorithm around how to show hotels. And we wanted to have more weight and influence of good deals, right? So like, what's a good deal for a hotel? And then we also wanted to modify the weight of the location so that we could improve conversion. Ultimately, it was how do we show better deals near you and increase conversion. That should have been what the spec said. But my product manager, shame on me as the manager for not stopping this, my product manager spent 6 weeks doing data regressions and pulling numbers and running spreadsheets and then doing this chart and testing a 0.7 weight versus a 0.72 weight and putting it all together, and wrote a spec that had all of the math and the algorithm of what it should be, what all the variables were, what variables shouldn't be used, what their weights should be, and what the resulting score should be for the algorithm. Do you know what the engineers did when they got that paper? They lost their shit. And I don't blame them. He basically had told them how, it was literally like, here is a 20-page document. Please go translate this into Ruby and make these variables this. I mean, it was like such a waste of time and talent. That was so dumb. So think about whatever documentation you're using and dumb it down and have the conversation of really what you're trying to accomplish, not how to accomplish it, right? That example, I'm not going to tell you how to write the algorithm. What I want to tell you is we need to improve conversion. We need to find a way to get these deals better. We need to find a way to amplify location. And let's work together to come up with the right solution. Don't spend all that time over-engineering. Literally, that's why they call it over-engineering. Because it's engineering. Let them do that, okay? And I mentioned this one earlier. Stuck in meetings. God, right? Like, this is a problem, right? There's all these meetings, and we got this one. We got to update this person and this person. I will also give you all a homework assignment. to go home and decline 3 regularly occurring meetings. I hate meetings. I hate meetings. Is there a decision being made in this meeting? If so, can we make the decision over email, over Slack, at the coffee machine? Do we really need a meeting? Is this an update meeting? God forbid you guys go to update meetings. Your time is too valuable. You are too expensive as employees. You have too many users to talk to be in a godforsaken update meeting. What is that about? Get out. Put the updates in Slack. I'll read it later. You don't need me to decide on anything. If you sit in a meeting and you don't actually say something, and if you're extroverted and you only say 5 things, because I know I'm an extrovert and we always talk all the time, so judge yourself, then you've wasted your time. That is not a good use of your time. Find another way to consume that data and get out and talk to users. So stop being in meetings. Go. 3 meetings. Cancel them. I dare you. Do it. Okay. So these were more from Ben that I kind of love, just because I really think the bad product manager is the strong part of the piece. Everybody talks about what good looks like, but no one talks about what bad looks like. So let's just lament bad a little more. You're complaining about answering the same question over and over again. Solve it with collateral. You give vague direction and speak in niceties. We should improve conversion. Or we need to increase the click-through of this from X to Y, right? Like, how are we getting specific about what we're actually trying to solve? You let engineers do what they want rather than solving the most important problem. So this comes back to influence, right? How many times have you had engineers and you're like, I don't know what the fuck they're working on all day. Like, this is so crazy. Like, why am I not in charge? They don't listen to me. They don't have to listen to you. Your challenge is to influence them. And if you haven't shown them what the biggest challenges are and what the most important things are to accomplish in the product, what the biggest customer issues are, you're failing and they're doing whatever they want. Think about it. Again, it's like lamenting the powers that be. It's your fault, not theirs. It's your fault. Get organized. Bring back problems. Tell them what we need to work on. Challenge them. Bring a user video back. Go on a user test, bring the video back, and make the engineers watch it. A number of times I've done that and had that bug fixed within 3 hours is incredible. Nothing is more annoying. They take pride in their work. They don't want to see those bugs either. Conflating issues versus deconstructing the problems into solvable chunks. I think this is a very obvious one, but certainly something I still see us do as product people, where there's just so many things to get done, you kind of like log roll it, I think is what they call it, a negotiation strategy, where you kind of put them all together and you're like, I'm just gonna sneak that one in and no one will know. It's like pork barreling or something like that in Congress. I don't know, there's like words for these things. None of these words are good. You don't wanna be that person. Don't do that. Talking features rather than telling a story, we talked about that. You have to be told what to do. I can't tell you how many young product managers I meet, and I'm gonna make sweeping assumptions, but this crowd looks like they've had a couple years of experience, and I mean that in a complimentary, nice way. No, like it's nice, like it's good, right? I like don't feel like I'm having to tell people to like go to work on time and things like that. But if you have young people in your organization who have to be told about what to do, like have your list. Have your list of like, if I get 10 minutes today, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna go for a walk and think and anticipate what's gonna go wrong with this next product release. I'm gonna spend some time creating collateral. I know I'm gonna go talk to a user. I'm just gonna pick up the phone and go to the first user that comes to mind. I'm gonna send 10 users an email and a little link to my calendar and say, I would love to talk to you. Pick a time, here's my phone number, call me. No joke, at HotelTonight, I would email 1,000 users a day, or excuse me, 1,000 users a week. This was a little bit before GDPR and that was kind of a thing, but whatever. Pretend that's just between friends. I would email 1,000 users a week and I would put my phone number in there. No one ever called me. Too bad. I really wanted to hear from them. They would email me back. But if you actually show that you're a real person, you give your phone number, like it adds credibility. So just email a user. Anyway, now I'm conflating issues. You get it. Don't have to be told what to do. Go talk to users. And then missing deadlines and not being disciplined. So that is, oops, I have to go this way and I have to point that way. Wait for it. All right. Final slide, and then I want all your questions, because I got some squinty faces, which is kind of good. I like that. That means like I struck a nerve. So, we will not answer these questions again, but I will challenge you. How many users did you talk to this week? I dare you to log yourself on how many users you talk to. You don't talk to as many users as you think you do. You'd be surprised. You know, holidays come. It's a busy week. It's hackathon. There's always an excuse, right? I challenge you to talk to at least 3 users a week. Consistently. Good luck. It's hard. How much time do you spend improving your mastery of the product or the market? How much time are you actually looking at what other people are doing, understanding what's going, talking to users, seeing what's changing? The only way to actually fully own your product and fully own the trust of the team is to understand all those pieces of context. How much time did you spend thinking? We talked a lot about that. I would challenge you to spend at least an hour. Again, it sounds easy, but it's just so easy to just jump into Slack and do email for a little bit, and it just feels so good to have a 0 inbox. Stop. Think. How did you get aligned in the company context this week, right? So this is talking to users, but this is talking to executives, right? Like, what's going on in our strategy? What's the big priorities? What's the funding? Like, what's our plan on this? Like, oh my God, did you see that news? How are we responding to this? What are the big priorities in marketing? What are the big priorities in engineering? What are the big priorities in sales? What's going on with the customer support team? No one ever calls them, those poor people. Go spend time with the customer support team. You want to make a friend? They're like desperate for friends. Go! Talk to the customer support team. They're like, finally, I've been trying to get your attention for years. It helps give you context in the company. And then bonus questions that should always be 0. No fires. No excuses, and always doing exactly what you said. So there you go. Those are my rants. There's plenty more where that came from if you didn't notice.
Thanks a lot, Amanda.
Thank you, guys.
Applause here.